So you just watched a video about making a bechamel sauce using a modernist thickener. I wanted to follow up on that video and talk a little bit about the science behind it. So the way that we can understand how a modernist thickener works is that these modernist thickeners are long molecules, right? So they're these long molecules. They really get in the way of the liquid that you add them to. So when they dissolve into the liquid, they kind of spread out, but they're long molecules. They get in the way, they resist the flow of the liquid, and therefore they increase the viscosity. In addition, as you cool them, they begin forming bonds, weak bonds with each other. And these weak bonds then can further restrict the flow of the fluid. This then leads to even a further increase in viscosity. So in this picture here, we mix in our modernist thickeners, and then as they cool, they begin forming these bonds and further restrict the flow of the water or the liquid, and therefore thicken it. The example given, the example we've been talking about is xanthan gum. So I just want to give you a sense for the effect that xanthan gum can have. So water with no xanthan gum, so you don't add any xanthan gum, has a viscosity, surprise, surprise, of water. If I add just 0.5% xanthan gum, the viscosity has gone up by a factor of 100. So it's 100 times higher than it once was. And if I have 2.5% xanthan gum, I now have a viscosity that's very similar to sour cream, but much higher than honey, not quite peanut butter, but it now has a very high viscosity. So xanthan gum, you can add just a little bit and you can have a huge impact on the viscosity. And this is helpful if you're attempting to make a dish and you don't want the flavor profile to be overwhelmed by flour if you make a starch-based thickener. So you can turn to xanthan gum, which you can add just a little bit to thicken it. It won't affect the taste, but it'll have the same effect. All right, so where do you find xanthan gum? That sounds like a strange ingredient. Well, it turns out, if you look on the back of many of your sauces, you'll see that's how it's thickened. There's xanthan gum in it. Okay, so here's some teriyaki sauce for those who drink hemp milk. Here's some sesame sauce, and all of them are being thickened with xanthan gum. It's a very, very common thickener. All right, so we've talked about how to thicken a sauce by reduction, so that's boiling off the water, how to thicken it with starch granules, so that's our starch-based thickener, and then we just talked about how to thicken it with a modernist thickener. Emulsions, we're going to put a pause on. We'll talk about that next week. But before we end the lecture for today, I did want to talk a little bit about shear thinning and shear thickening. So that'll be the next series of videos to cover that topic.